Hi guys, it's James from Meatster again, and today is the episode I've been waiting to do for quite a few weeks now, and that's because if you're going to dry age beef, you're going to need a bit of patience. I bought this USDA Prime Sirloin, as you'd call it in the States, sirloin we call it over here, some time ago, maybe 6 weeks ago or something like that. I decided, as it came wet aged only, that I wanted to see what it was like to dry age my own beef. Now, I don't have the facility at my own house to do that, but I'm really good friends with my butcher around the corner here, Ealing Butchers. They're fantastic and they've been really helpful on this one. They've got a wonderful dry aging area in the butcher's shop, so they actually did it for me and I just went to visit it about once a week, take some pictures so I could show you. So I took the beef there. I did this alongside a Galician sirloin, which I'm going to make another video of because that already had some dry aging. So that video will be more about what happens when you dry age something for a pretty long time. This one I really just wanted to see the difference between wet age and dry age. So let's keep this short and sweet today. What am I going to do? I'm just going to show you what the beef looks like. Alright guys, it smells amazing in here and I'm pretty hungry, so let's slice these bad boys open. So, just so you know, this one is the wet aged only, the 2-week dry aged, and the 3 and a bit, about 22, 23 days dry aged over here. Unfortunately, the thicknesses are different. I tried my hardest to cook them similarly, but we'll find out in a second. Nonetheless, I'm expecting quite a large difference between this one and these two, and obviously a subtle difference between this one, and that's what I'm intrigued to find out. You know, we often pay more to have more dry aged beef, but is it necessary? Let's find out. What I would be interested to see though is if the wet aged one is more tender, less tender. I know the flavour will be different, the smell is certainly different. These two and this one really does have that nutty, very sort of beefy, slightly gamey aroma, whereas this one is just clean, delicious smelling beef. So let's go for this one first. So it's pink throughout here in this middle piece, so it's medium. Let's just cut this fat off here. Okay. I haven't really had a proper steak for about 2.5 weeks, so cheers. Really juicy. Just excuse me a second while I plate a little bit up for my wife. She's waiting patiently behind the camera. And she wants to see what this is like too. Wait a second. I've got to just slice up the others first. So So let's see how this one is. Okay, they look very similarly cooked, which is great. Okay, great. They're all cooked identically, which is important. It's almost irrelevant whether we prefer it medium, medium rare, medium well. They're cooked the same, so that's great. All right, done. This is most aged, middle aged, least aged. Okay, let's go on to the first dry aged one. This is where we start to see what difference does it make to dry age the beef. If I've forgotten to do it already, let me tell you now what these weighed before and after. Okay, when I took the USDA Prime down to the butcher, I had a piece that was 1.536 kilograms. And when I'd left it for 15 days, that came down to 1.4 kilograms exactly. And after another, so then I took a piece off. So I took about 344 grams off, which is this steak. And then after another just over a week, so we were then at that 3 and a bit weeks, we had lost another 32 grams from that 1.056. So obviously the largest loss was right at the beginning. That first 2 weeks made the biggest difference. So let's taste that and see what difference it makes in the actual eating. Here we go. Okay. Oh wow. That is actually a much bigger difference than I thought it would be. Just going back for a piece of the wet age. You know, they both have the same saltiness. The wet aged one though, it's sort of in the middle, has much less flavour as you chew through it. You don't keep getting bags of sort of beefy flavour, and then as you eat through this one, which is salted identically, you know, they taste the same on the outside, have the same crust. Oh, I get a lot more of that really mushroomy, gamey character that you get from dry aged beef, which is what I really enjoy and what I was looking for. So that's quite exciting that 2 weeks only makes such a big difference. That I can buy a large sirloin and just within just over 2 weeks, I can then enjoy it as dry aged beef. And you know, we have to think about the marketing of 28, 35, 40 odd, 50, 60, 70 day dry aged beef, where they can charge you more. Because of course they charge you more for their storage costs and for the loss of the weight of the beef. But as we've just demonstrated, the largest loss of weight is just in that first 2 weeks. That's where the real difference is made. So are they just charging you a lot more because their marketing machine is quite clever? Well, here we go. This is the one I've been hoping it will be delicious. I mean, it's a great piece of beef. This USDA Prime, it's not something we really get in the UK very often. It's harder to find. So it does have a different flavour to our British beef. Well, let me be completely open and honest. Obviously, it's a thicker piece. It took about 4.5 minutes to cook. This was about 3.5 minutes, and this was about 2.5 minutes, and they came out looking very similar on the inside. But let's not forget that the larger piece will get more of a crust because it's on there for longer. So I'm going to discount the deliciousness of that really crunchy crust you get on the outside. It really is delicious though. The thicker the piece, you know, often the more delicious it is. Let's have a nice chunk of this one, just really see how it feels. So in the wet age one, in comparison now, you feel more of an iron flavour. It has that slight blood taste, which is just part and parcel of having steak. I mean, you know, it's part of the flavour that I enjoy. But having only eaten dry aged beef for quite a few years, that's not a flavour I've really tasted a lot in dry aged beef. So let's do the same with this 2 week. Completely different. All the iron has gone and it's replaced with incredibly complex flavors. And just for the sake of 15 days. It's remarkable, actually. It's definitely worth paying slightly more, and it's definitely worth, if you're doing it yourself, losing that weight in beef, because you have a slightly more compact texture, which is really satisfying to chew through. And then the flavor difference is massive, which... Okay, now that I've taken a larger piece, yeah, there is a large difference between that extra 8 days or so that this one has. As much difference as there is between wet aged and 2 week dry aged. That first step to dry aging completely changes the flavor. But I would say the intensity is twice as much when it's had an extra 8 days. That's great because this is still only 22 days aged. It's not even at that 28, which is normally where you see dry aged sort of marketed from. And for someone that wants to dry age their own beef, that's brilliant. It takes less time to get to the flavor that I want to. Let me try one more piece and then we'll get to our conclusion. This is what I would say. Is it worth paying extra for dry aging over wet aging? Well, if you have started with a great piece of beef in the first place, wet aged beef is great, it's delicious. You definitely cannot say that only dry aged beef is worth eating. And I'm sure that some people would prefer wet aged because dry aging gives this nutty, mushroomy, gamey flavour that not everyone will love. So in many respects, especially when it costs less, for a lot of people, wet aging is ideal. If you already know that you like dry aging, then often that's the only way you're going to go. You're only going to eat dry aged beef when you can, when you have the choice. Now, as to how long you should dry age it for, well, clearly 2 weeks is enough to make a massive difference. It lost 10% of its weight, which is significant, and so a lot of reactions must have happened there, a lot of water's disappeared, and so just from that water going, you'll get more concentration of flavour, but clearly the aging process produces its own flavours. You know, coming from the wine world, I can only compare it to an aged wine as opposed to a young wine. The flavours in a young wine are very primary, fruity, easy, and as it ages, you develop all these nuances and characters that weren't there before. By the time you get to 3 week, you're starting to get to much more serious intensity of flavour and complexity of flavour. And so if you're aging it yourself, that extra week is definitely worth it. It didn't lose 10%, didn't lose 5% in that 1/3 week, which it had done in the first week and the second week. It lost a lot less than that. So you're not losing a significant amount of your meat and you're gaining probably twice as much in flavour. So going forward, I'm going to do this again in a few months and we're going to have a bigger piece that we can age for much longer, and I want to see what happens with that. But all I can say is these are all delicious. It's from the same cow, in fact, from the same piece. It's a great experiment to do if you have the opportunity to dry age your own beef, and I think you'll enjoy it. Enjoy seeing what the outcome is. These are stunning. I'm going to go and eat them and enjoy it. So if you've enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up. Think about subscribing to the channel if you like this sort of content, and leave a comment down below. Tell me what you think, what your experience with dry aged beef is, and whether you've dry aged your own. Give me some tips, and thank you for watching. See you next time.